Welcome, everyone. I am so thrilled to guide you through today's explainer. We're going to break down a truly fascinating lecture delivered by Radhanath Swami on July 27, 1990, right in Mumbai, India. We'll be diving deep into the ancient text of the Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically Canto 8, Chapter 5, Text 47. What we're about to explore together is a timeless, incredibly striking contrast between two totally different ways to live your life. One is the frantic, often super frustrating chase for material wealth, and the other is what the Swami describes as the miraculous, logic-defined power of true spiritual faith. All right, let's dive right in. Here's our quick roadmap for the explainer. We're starting with the context and the source text itself. From there, we'll unpack the illusion of material wealth, followed by the astonishing power of true faith. Then we'll hit on some very practical rules for cultivating love and trust, and wrap it all up with a summary of our main takeaways. So let's kick things off with Section 1, the context and source text. This beautifully translated quote presents the ultimate thesis of Radhanath Swami's lecture, and it sets up this immediate, massive tension. On one side, you've got people who are fiercely anxious, literally working themselves to the bone to accumulate wealth, yet finding the results completely unsatisfying. Then, on the flip side, you have devotees who dedicate their lives entirely to service, and somehow they achieve substantial, expectation-exceeding results without that same frantic, grinding labor. It almost sounds too good to be true, right? To really grasp what's going on here, we need to clearly define these two paths. First up is the Karmi. Think of a Karmi as a materialistic or fruitive worker. The Swami describes this person as someone who is constantly calculating, stressing over the past, present, and future. They are completely swept up in material energy just to pile up temporary wealth for their own sense gratification. Now, contrast that with the devotee or Vaishnava. This is someone operating purely on absolute faith. They take whatever they have, whether they're highly educated or completely illiterate, and they dedicate it fully to the loving service of the Lord. When you put these two approaches side by side, the difference in both the method and the final outcome is just breathtaking. The Karmi is on this endless treadmill, working tirelessly just to maintain the body and chase fleeting pleasures, which, as the Swami notes, ultimately leads to a profound sense of loneliness. The devotee, however, is working sincerely for God's pleasure. Because their entire foundation is built on complete faith, they operate with this fearless, joyful consciousness. And the kicker? The results completely defy standard material logic. Let's move on to Section 2. The illusion of material wealth, and see exactly how the Swami illustrates this misery. $30,000. Now, what's crucial about this specific number is that it was the weekly salary of a famous Hollywood TV star the Swami once met. The Swami actually points out how completely upside down our society is. We have people hiding their spiritual practices, sometimes using discreet clickers instead of japa beads so they don't stand out. But at the exact same time, society absolutely worships celebrity. So he has this deep conversation with a massive celebrity who is pulling in 30 grand every single week. And here is the shocking reality hiding behind all that cash. The star confessed to the Swami that despite having everything, the ultimate fame, the endless money, the beautiful people around him, he was entirely, soul-crushingly lonely. He was completely empty inside. He even admitted that he and his famous peers were basically just putting on a massive show of happiness while secretly relying on drugs and intoxicants just to get out of bed and face the world. It proves a massive point. Getting everything the material world has to offer can actually lead to intense, suffocating anxiety. The Swami brilliantly outlines this trap as a ladder of frustration. Think about it. First, you're poor, and you think, man, if I can just reach the middle class, I'll be comfortable. Then you hit middle class and immediately want to be upper class. You reach upper class and think, if I'm a millionaire, then I've finally made it. But when you become a millionaire, you suddenly have enemies and competitors, so you think, okay, if I'm a billionaire, I'll finally be secure. Do you see the pattern? No matter how high you climb, the feeling of lacking just grows, eventually leading to a total feeling of emptiness, or what he calls a spiritual suicide, a desire to just merge into nothingness to escape the constant agitation. I absolutely love this analogy from the lecture. Radhanath Swami compares this whole material chase to a donkey with a carrot tied to a stick on its own back. That carrot is always dangling exactly one step out of reach. The donkey spends its entire day carrying heavy loads, foaming at the mouth, completely exhausting itself, thinking, just one more step and I've got it. And at the end of the day, even if it gets the carrot, it's rotten and doesn't even fill its stomach. That is exactly how illusory energy operates. It dangles an illusion of happiness that keeps us working tirelessly, lifetime after lifetime, without ever giving us true satisfaction. Okay, let's pivot away from that heavy frustration and jump into Section 3, the power of true faith. $2. That tiny amount, the equivalent of about 40 Indian rupees at the time, is all that Srila Prabhupada brought with him when he arrived in America to start his movement. Let's really put that into perspective. With $2 in New York City, you couldn't even buy a simple raw lettuce salad. You definitely couldn't rent the absolute cheapest, bare-bones hotel room, which was $25. You couldn't even get a meaningful subway ticket to travel around. Plus, outside of India, those rupees weren't even worth the paper they were printed on. The point is this. From a strictly material standpoint, Srila Prabhupada had absolutely nothing. He wasn't there to make a living. He definitely wasn't chasing the carrot. The before and after here is just mind-blowing. The starting point, arriving in the US with 40 rupees, sitting under a tree in a park, and simply chanting with a cheap hippie drum. The result? Within just 8 to 10 years, driven by pure faith and dedicated service, his movement achieved over 40 crores. That's 400 million rupees worth of property all over the globe. For Radhanath Swami, this is the ultimate validation of our opening text. It proves that devotees really can achieve substantial, frankly impossible results without adopting that frantic, calculating mindset of the Karmi. But how does that actually happen? Well, it all comes down to a beautiful promise from Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. I will protect what he has, and I will carry what he lacks. Radhanath Swami uses this great image. He says devotees are like little sparrows trying to dry up the ocean. They do the work, collecting 1 rupee here, 1 rupee there, seemingly making no dent at all. But because they are dedicating every single drop of their energy for the Lord's pleasure and not for their own selfish gain, God steps in and provides exactly what they lack. So, how do we practically build a movement that harnesses this immense power? That brings us to section 4, cultivating love and trust. Radhanath Swami doesn't pull any punches here. He explicitly names public enemy number 1 when it comes to love and trust: gossip. Spreading rumors, finding faults, criticizing others, and constantly speculating about people's motives. He actually goes as far as to state that gossiping and rumor-mongering are worse than illicit sex or gambling. Why? Because personal mistakes can eventually be atoned for, but gossiping creates a toxic atmosphere of suspicion. It literally destroys the integrity, the unity, and the faith of the entire community. To fight that toxicity, the Swami lays out some very clear, actionable rules. We absolutely must glorify others. We have to speak positively, completely avoid spreading rumors, and really attentively follow our spiritual principles, like chanting. But the biggest key? Everyone, whether you're sweeping the streets, preaching at a college, or running the whole temple, must accept the position of a menial servant. Cultivating that mindset of being the servant of the servant is what creates an irresistible spiritual atmosphere. And this perfectly illustrates why community is the whole game. Radhanath Swami shared an awesome anecdote about a rainbow gathering festival. They shared tons of deep philosophy with the crowds there, but the public told them straight up it wasn't just the philosophy that hooked them. People are sick and tired of a society that fights like cats and dogs. What actually made people want to join was seeing that the devotees weren't arguing, they weren't gossiping, they genuinely loved and cooperated with one another. Demonstrating real love and trust is the actual, visible fruit of the philosophy. All right, let's bring all these incredible insights together in Section 5, Summary of Main Points. When we break it on down, the contrast is undeniable. The materialist mindset is endlessly calculating, always chasing that dangling carrot, while the spiritualist relies entirely on faith. The materialist does exhausting labor for temporary wealth, whereas the spiritualist engages in joyful, dedicated service. In community, the materialist deals with jealousy and feels lonely even at the peak of fame, while the spiritualist focuses on menial service and building deep trust. And the ultimate result? The materialist is left with endless frustration and anxiety, while the spiritualist achieves fearlessness, deep joy, and success that totally blows expectations out of the water. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought as you go about your week. Look at your own pursuits. Are you completely exhausting yourself, endlessly chasing that dangling carrot of material illusion? Or are you ready to step off the treadmill and cultivate the lasting, fearless wealth of true faith and deeply trusting community? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this profound 1990 lecture by Radhanath Swami. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep seeking the truth.